Welcome to American Medicine Today. I'm alongside Dr. Bonati, and we're going to discuss how molecule activation can actually reverse the symptoms of aging. So, Dr. Bonati, how exactly does that happen?
A group of scientists in MD Anderson in Texas, they discover a molecule. This molecule is a product that is associated with an enzyme that we call the telomerase. Now, the telomerase is an enzyme that will produce a control of the amount of this enzyme that is going to provoke practically a control of the aging of the cell. So one thing that happens with telomerase is you need to know the levels of the telomerase. If the level of the telomerase is very below the physiological levels, then the telomerase will not be able to activate the telomeres. When the telomeres are not being activated, what really happens is you start to age. The arms of the telomeres become shorter and shorter, and then suddenly you start to age. The telomerase has the power to control that. And if we have a molecule that can create that product and make the product active, then three things will happen. One of the things that will happen is that you are going to have strength on the muscles. You are going to have control of your balance. You are going to improve. Not only improve, you're going to have normal memory. If you start to see those elements, you can walk, you have strength, you can think and act normal, then practically you are giving a new life to that person. And that's what they did is they did some studies on rats, and they put as an experiment in all rats.
Okay.
In comparison to a 75 years old human. And they gave them the opportunity to have telomerase reversing the compound that was creating the aging.
Right.
And then when that happens, then they create a type of a compound that they call active compound that activate the telomerase. And this compound now is under study because they are thinking that will be incredible if we can go ahead and have something available that allows you to control your level of telomerase in your cells. And that is the stage that we are now. Imagine what is the extension of that discovery. If that enzyme start to produce in the cell, then the aging will reverse. And if the aging will reverse, then this person will gain their memory, and the brains will work normal.
But we're still years away from that happening.
Well, I don't know yet, but because they are talking to create a pharmaceutical product with it. But at the same time, one of the major problems with people is that you have heart problems. So all the people dies constantly. We heard heart attacks. Well, this telomerase also will reverse these cells and will create cells that they are going to be not anymore with the damage. So these cells are going to heal the heart of the people. So heart diseases can be controlled. The other problem is we see a lot of population that they are intellectually good. They have good brain, they have good heart, they cannot walk. They are bounded to a wheelchair.
Right.
And usually, today we have techniques at the Institute that we can correct almost that. But this is something even better because this will be a product, a pharmaceutical product that will increase the strength of your muscles. At the same time, will create strength of the nerves that they function with those muscles. They create some sort of a regeneration of neurons. So those ones will allow these muscles and the neurons in the brain. They will allow not only to create a system where the person will be active, will be able to think and work normal, and will have a normal heart. So practically the most fearsome diseases that are right now in the market of our society, they can be wiped out with this product.
You know, it's scary though, because when you say it's going to go from the research stage where they're doing the correct thing, it's going to be in the hands of big pharma, who are notorious for adding the things that make it ineffective and can hurt people. Let's hope that doesn't happen and this product will make its way out to consumers, but with full benefit to the patient or consumer at that point, and we'll all remain young. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. You are watching American Medicine Today.
The loss of coordination in my legs, I'd trip over my feet, end up flat in the concrete. Dr. Bonati to me was God sent. Walk like that in a while. I don't remember how long. I didn't have to make a massive lifestyle change. I noticed today that I could sit and stand up without a cane. I would have to give it excellent and above my expectations.
Visit AskBonati.com. Jason Ashby of Largo enjoys living the casual Florida lifestyle. He's currently a full-time student, but in his spare time participates in group sports like bowling and softball and takes long walks in the beautiful weather.
I first started feeling my pain probably about a year to year and a half ago. It started in my back behind my right shoulder blade and slowly worked its way up through my neck, down my right shoulder, down my right arm, and into my pinky, ring finger, and middle finger on my right hand. It definitely made life kind of challenging at times. I definitely noticed a loss in grip strength. Definitely had a hard time sleeping, hard time driving. Definitely difficulty like putting on my shoes. Your normal everyday things that most people take for granted. It really kind of affected everyday life. I tried some conservative treatments, acupressure, massage therapy, using a TENS unit to try and do some muscle and nerve stimulation. It would be fine for a couple of days, and then all the pain would reappear. I was taking some medications as well, basically just over-the-counter, Tylenol, Aleve.
He lived with this pain for more than a year and a half until he decided to reach out to the Bonati Spine Institute for help.
I started looking online to find a doctor that I knew would be able to help me with what I was dealing with. The first company that I thought of was the Bonati Spine Institute. I knew that they were the forefront for everything that was going on in that field. The first time I reached out to Bonati, spoke to a very lovely young lady who got me set up with a schedule to come in and actually do an initial consultation with the Bonati Spine Institute. We proceeded to have an MRI done and a set of x-rays done. We sat down and looked at both the MRI images and the x-ray images. He was able to really show me exactly what was going on and why I was feeling the pain and discomfort that I was. He made me feel very, very comfortable and very confident in what not only he was gonna do, but also just the entire staff of Bonati and what they were gonna do and how they approached everything.
He was diagnosed with 2 bulging discs at C6 and 7 and C7 and T1.
I remember being in the OR, and I remember people being around. I remember the surgeons and the attendings being around. I do remember there being a screen. I do recall the surgeon asking me how I felt, if I was feeling anything, if I was feeling any kind of discomfort or any kind of tingling or numbing or any kind of sensations. The only time I ever really spoke up was when I did feel something, and that let them know that they were in the right area for the procedure that they were doing. There was really no pain, to be honest. The only time I remember ever speaking up to them, I felt kind of a throbbing sensation. The relief in pain and discomfort was almost instantaneous. Before I even left the facility to actually go home, I actually felt like I had full mobility back, which was phenomenal. I really felt no discomforts. I really felt no pain. I really felt like I was a brand new person.
Now Jason can live without hesitation and get back to the good things in life.
Post-surgery, everything is pretty much back to normal. I feel better now than I felt in probably the last 5 years, to be honest. And that was even before I started even having any kind of effects. My quality of life just seems to be 100% better. I can definitely sleep at night, which is great. I can sit in my car and actually go for long drives if I feel like it and not have to worry about any kind of discomfort or any kind of pain. I can actually get back to playing the sports that I've loved to play ever since I was a kid. I can go for runs now. I can ride my bike. I can do all these things that I was kind of reluctant to do because I wasn't sure about what kind of pain or what kind of discomfort I would be in. So I was very reluctant to attempt to do the things that I always done. And now I have no reluctancy to try anything, which is great.
To see more stories of recovery just like this, search for the Bonati Spine Institute on YouTube, Rumble, Apple's App Store, Google's Play Store, Roku, and Amazon's Fire TV. Welcome back to American Medicine Today. I'm Kimberly Bonati alongside Dr. Alfred Bonati. So we're going to discuss back pain. Why is it so prevalent here and throughout the world?
They are trying to tell the population that people who has back pain, they're trying to tell them that the problem is not really a back problem, is on their brain. And the explanation is some type of studies they did with several patients, around 150 patients. One at the University of Colorado and other in California, University of California. And those are type of studies that unfortunately they are going through major journals. And the journals, because the surgical procedures don't have an answer for the back pain, the journals are trying to promote the idea that the pain acts like this. When the pain is more than 3 months, and sometimes decades, these people develop some type of a wave that goes towards the brain, and the brain starts to accumulate that knowledge. And then suddenly, because that information is permanent, that's what we call chronic back pain. And that chronic information to the brain creates a type of a knowledge on the brain that becomes like part of your own body. So the brain understands that you are in pain, but that's normal.
Okay.
So the problem with that is they are looking at the possibilities to capture that wave and create some type of an electrical procedures that they are going to implant on the brain to be able to remove that wave. You will be with pain, but that's normal.
Okay.
Because it's normal, you will rationalize that you need to live with it. And because you need to live with it, then the cure for the back pain will not exist.
You're saying they're going to implant a device in people's brains so that they now tolerate the pain instead of fixing it, because now it's all mental and not a physical condition.
In the short way, that is what they are saying.
Okay.
Well, I am extremely upset with that type of information
I bet.
because through the last 40 years, I'm dealing with people with back problems. And the back pain is not only real, it's also mechanical. The people are not really understanding where is the pathology that creates that pain.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to talk about the patented Bonati Spine Procedures. You're watching American Medicine Today.
I think everybody was shocked, like, really, you had surgery today? I had a drain tube. I was at my desk doing payroll for 200 employees, worked till night, got up, went to bed.
Actually, the recovery was great. I mean, I really immediately felt the difference. I was able to go back to work within a couple of days.
The progress after each procedure was amazingly good. The recovery, all told, has been phenomenal.
We went to the Bonati Institute, and that was the turning point in my life. This type of surgery is so much more advanced, and the recovery time is so much less that it's just a no-brainer. If you've got pain, go to Bonati.
The surgeries that I had, actually, I recovered very easily from, I would say. I actually went to work the following afternoon.
That afternoon, when it was done, I actually felt so much better already.
6 days after surgery, I was back in the gym, slowly but surely working my way back to fighting, back to basically 100% of fighting, So 6 days, and everybody was in awe. Like, didn't you just get out of surgery? I'm like, yeah, I feel great. And like, okay, let's see how you do. And I was rolling with everybody, and I'm in the advanced class. That sounds a lot right there.
First time I came in here was Monday, and today is Thursday. I've had 2 surgeries and am doing fantastic. I'm still in shock that I can walk. That's all within 4 days.
Bonati succeeds where others fail. Welcome back to American Medicine Today. Dr. Bonati is discussing his patented Bonati Spine Procedures. Maybe you can give us a little insight into how you handle that versus basically the spine industry.
A patient goes to a doctor, a neurosurgeon, orthopedic surgeon, general practitioner, internal medical physician, neurologist, all these groups that deal with the back pain. The surgeons will say, I can remove your leg pain. Mm-hmm. I cannot remove your back pain.
Right.
And it's true, there are 2 different elements. Mm-hmm. If you have a herniated disc, if you have a bulging disc, if you have a degenerative changes, you may remove the radiculopathy that patient has.
Right.
So the leg pain goes away.
Okay.
In the last probably 2 years, we are treating back pain with a 98%, and I'm not going to say 100%, but almost every patient that we treat with the techniques that we develop at the Institute, they are permanent cure.
98.75%.
That is talking about the general type of spine treatments that we do.
Right.
But the back pain with the technique that we develop is even superior to those numbers because you can eradicate back pain because it's a mechanical problem. The problem is you need to know where to go and you need to know what to do.
You mentioned the device implanted in the brain. I know that they're giving people medications. They're trying, TMS and therapies, for people who might be depressed and think they're in pain. We're medicating everyone to a degree where when we do talk to your patients, some were contemplating suicide because the pain was so real. And after being told by multiple surgeons that it's all in their brain, they actually thought taking them out of this world was the best option until they found you and your patented procedures.
I will say that we are blessed to see the results that we see every single day at the Institute. I am myself amazed that we were in a situation that we learned so much of these problems on the back, that we are finding solutions that they are permanent and they are absolutely seriously good. The back pain is different animal.
But the actual pathology would still remain. So that's like treating a symptom, but not necessarily the problem. And that's where we're going to get into that in future episodes of American Medicine Today. And if you'd like to find out if you're a candidate for those patented Bonati Spine procedures, you can visit askbonati.com. Well, that wraps up this segment on American Medicine Today. Make sure you check us out anytime, anywhere on our streaming app. Search keyword AMT. If you have any comments or questions, contact us at the numbers below. Or you can tweet at Dr. Bonati using the hashtag American Medicine Today or hashtag AMT. We would like to hear from you.